Welcome back to Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig McFarlane. Today, I'm very excited. I'm passing time with my friend Jeff. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Craig. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Excellent. It's a beautiful sunny day here.
It's very nice. I know. I want to feel like spring and summer's on its way, and we're not going to have another winter, but it's Calgary. Who freaking knows?
I know. I won't lie. I've been looking for flowers, though. You know, like the first sign of anything popping out of the ground.
Yeah.
It should happen any day now.
Then you're like, yes, I'm
Then
set.
spring is here. Yeah, exactly.
I know we were, as some of people may know, like I work very casually at Born Brewing and help out with events there, as I help do a lot of events throughout the city. But we were chatting about Born's birthday party is at the end of April, and we're hoping for a big patio weather. And we're talking about planters, and our dear friend Nicole does wonderful flowers. So we're already talking about Nicole's plants, and I'm like, yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Soon.
Soon,
Yeah.
Soon, hopefully.
I mean, there's forecasted. It's all above zero. So
Yeah.
spring is here.
Spring is here.
Yeah.
We'll have one more cold snap. It's usually what happens.
Probably.
But
Hopefully, we get more snow. Honestly,
Yeah.
We need the moisture.
we do need the moisture.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's that tough time of year where, like, I'm ready for the snow to be done, but like that white snow is really nice and covers up the crap that is right now, which is
Brown. Everything is just brown and
God.
gray.
It's
gross. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's just like the mud piles, and so yes,
The splashes, the salt on everybody's car. Even if you go wash your car, it gets splashed immediately.
Oh yeah.
So.
I saw my friend's dog yesterday, and he just got a bath, and I'm like, I would have just waited.
I mean, you still have to pay them.
Yeah.
They'll get more frequent baths right now. I imagine,
Yes.
so.
See, this is what's going to happen today. I just know it. We're just going to chat about
Chat about anything and everything.
everything.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So when you and I were chatting about you coming on the podcast, you had a few different topics, and I was like, you know what? I think we just cover it all.
Okay. Sounds good.
So the first one I really want to talk on, which I think will lead into the other ones that we have in mind, is just what do you think it is like currently in 2024 to be a gay male in Calgary?
To be a gay male in Calgary. Well, how am I dressed today? What do you think? Do I look delightful? I think I
look
brought
delightful.
my rainbow glasses.
Yeah, you got your rainbow glasses.
Yeah.
You got a nice pearl necklace on.
Pearl necklace on, yeah. A couple of things. I feel like it's important as a white man who has a lot of privilege to create space for other people. And so I try to dress a little on the gay side 100% of the time, like just identifiers, just for people to create space for them and to use my privilege to allow that for other people. Maybe that's too, I don't know. But yeah, I think that's it. It's hard. I think in Alberta, it's mirroring politics that are down in the States. And I grew up with that for a long time in Kentucky. And it's very negative towards people in the LGBT community. And right now, it's particularly addressed towards the transgender community in our community. But the reality is it's a slippery slope. And so if we start to take rights away from one group, it's really easy to expand that into other groups. And I think what challenges me the most is instead of normalizing lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, two-spirited people in our community and celebrating the diversity, instead we are ostracizing them. We are making it in order to talk about gay people that, or families that have two dads or two moms, or to talk about people who were born or they were born intersex, and a doctor made that decision for them. And sometimes that doctor makes the wrong decision. All of these situations, none of them are normal. And in order to talk about them in school anymore here in Alberta, with the potential new laws coming into place, it's, they would require affirmative parental permission. So instead of it being a normalized thing that a portion of the population is, it's instead a conversation that you need parental consent. And, how many parents, what generations do we have of people that are undereducated or, grew up in an area that is discriminatory and, doesn't see a lot of diversity. And so often it's driven by fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very much driven by fear and lack of knowledge. And it's so funny I may have even brought this up on the podcast before, but like talking with friends who have kids and these laws come into play, these rulings that Alberta wants to have to protect kids, and they're like when a few years ago when they first introduced any student wanting to join the like gay straight alliance at school had to like the parents were going to be notified, and I had friends being like, I don't understand, Craig, like I would be upset that my kid wouldn't want to come and talk to me and tell me. I was like, you're not the person this is about. This isn't about you. Who this kid is growing up knowing their Uncle Craig and that you fully support him, and you'd have no care in the world if your child is queer, whatever it may be. It's for the other people who unfortunately are hiding it from their parents because they don't feel safe and they're afraid of what's going to happen to them if they come out while they're still very much having to be at home.
Absolutely. I mean, we grew up in a time, I mean, it's still that time now where, you know, the church is, depending on the church, is either somewhat accepting, you know, on the range of things to completely not accepting, you know, in the case of the Church of Latter-day Saints, in the case of some of the stricter Mennonites, you know, Catholicism is a questionable, you know, the Pope has definitely taken steps to be more supportive, but there's been a lot of resistance in North America towards that. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's United Churches that are very welcoming. There's specks of all sorts of religions that are very welcoming, but depending where you grow up, you can grow up in an area where you have a lot of shame towards it, even if your individual parents don't. And frequently, I mean, I grew up in a situation where I felt a lot of shame coming out. I tried to come out at 13 and then, you know, was put in essentially conversion therapy and came out again at 18. And, yeah, I still have conversations with my mom today about it. I think it changed the trajectory of my life, and I wish nothing more in life than to try and minimize the number of people that are impacted by that. Why do kids still need to come out as gay? Why can't all kids just come out as whatever they are whenever they feel like it?
Yeah.
I think most people are on a spectrum anyway. There's not 100% heterosexual or 100% homosexual. There's somewhere in the middle. You know, the bisexual community is much bigger than it.
Yeah.
As identified in the past, and most people are curious or have tried more than one thing or have seen more than one thing and are curious about it. And I don't know. I consider myself 100% on one side of the spectrum, so it's not really fair to say most people fall in the middle, but I really do believe that most people fall in the middle.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you from experience, I've met some people who fall in the middle or just want to try it.
Or just want to try, yeah.
And that's the way it should be with sexuality. It should be so much more welcoming, and there shouldn't be that whole stigma around it. If you know, if a guy has hooked up with one guy and that was it, and I think it'd be cool if the guys can be like, oh yeah, no, like I had sex with this dude. It wasn't really for me, but you know, I've done it.
I mean, in general, in Western culture, we have this shame in North America around sex. You know, we can't get past what your sexual orientation is, much less like any other conversation around sex. And it's really limiting because I feel like most people, one, you get most of your sexual ideas from porn, and porn is a business that is cut and it is made to try and keep you entertained and watching as long as you can. And yeah, I think people are not okay with the things that they're into or don't know the things that inherently turn them on. I think, you know, there's a lot of shame around that in different aspects of, you know, if you're kinkier or if you're not, or any variety of things. But then not knowing what that is, it's hard to find people that then touch those things for you because you don't know what they are. And so I would really encourage people to find out what turns them on. But yeah, we can't get past the discussion on orientation. So how do we talk about that? Or how do we address nudity? We have such a weird issue with nudity in North America, and really we're all human beings. We all have parts, and so why can't we normalize it? Like, what does it matter? I
mean, it's always been so weird, and like I've never understood just so many things. Like I remember in high school, the principal coming to talk to us, and I went to high school in Crossfield, small town. My grad class was like 48 kids.
That is small town.
Yeah, that is small town. And I remember a principal came in once to talk about the dress code because girls were wearing like the spaghetti straps.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were like, I don't know how many times we have to talk to you about this. And I was like, listen, I was like, do you think any guy here is being turned on by these girls' shoulders? Like,
I mean, how short were the skirts? That was. I feel like that was the thing when I was in high school.
Yeah, the
It's like,
skirts
how
were-
long were the skirts?
the skirts were never really that big of a problem. It was
Okay.
always like the spaghetti straps. I'm like, come on, like you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Correct, yeah.
It's also like 30 degrees outside. Like,
And the air conditioner probably doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's miserable.
so it's just these things that I feel like gets ingrained with us in school. It's usually the school. I mean, it's oftentimes at home, but like there's things that we forget about at school. Just the way the females were treated in school.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then lack of proper sexual education. And that's, you know,
What was sexual education like here in Alberta? Curiously, in Crossfield. I had sex education in Kentucky, so it was... I'm curious.
it was, for the most part, I found it was pretty, I don't know, like standard. We never talked about being gay.
Okay.
So there was no queer sexual discussion.
Yep.
The girls learned, like, we'd be in classes together, but then at times the girls would go and watch the video about like periods, and the guys, I remember the one video, I feel like others have seen it too, but it was so they made matching videos where the girl and the guy, who were both 12, 13 or whatever, were like overlapping, like it was like Avengers Endgame, like, but the 12-year-old boy has a wet dream, and he wakes up in the middle and then it's like, what? And his big brother like talks to him about it, like sits on his bed and it's like, oh, it's like, okay, it happens to me. And I'm just like, we should be talking about this stuff, but I was like, this is weird that like it's like the big brother talking about. And then we touched on STIs a little bit.
Okay.
At that point it was still STDs, but we did touch on them, and like we did an activity, and it was such a way to scare people, because I remember it. We each got an index card, and we went around, and you had to get 3 people's signatures in the class, and then once we did that, we went back to our seat, and she was like, okay, everybody flip over on the back. Who's got a little dot? And I was like, I do. So she's like, stand up. She's like, you've got chlamydia. I was like, oh.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So then
How old were you, 12?
No, this time I was like 16.
Okay,
So it was
okay.
better, but it was like, and then it went to, I had to read the first person on my list, and they stood up, and then we both read our next person on our list, and and eventually like everybody in the class stood up, and I basically gave everybody chlamydia.
Yeah.
And it was such a like, and I think it's so important to talk about STIs, and like the rates in Alberta are going up, and now the AHS has been told to like swipe away and delete anything sex education.
Off social media.
Off
It's
social
absolutely
media,
right.
yeah.
And have you been to the Sheldon Schumer Clinic lately? Just curious.
No, I have not been in a
Okay.
while.
So I recommend, if you're sexually active, you should go get tested every
Yes.
3 months. That's like the minimum bare expectation if you're sexually active. But at the clinics, frequently it's like 3-4 hour waits, which is, you know, it seems astounding to me in a place where we want to reduce the number of STIs
Yeah.
that are happening, and we want to encourage people to get tested, and that be whether you're gay or straight or, you know, some whatever you are.
Yeah.
Like if you're being sexually active with different people, you can transmit things orally. You can transmit things, you know, through vaginal sex, through, you know, anal sex, through kissing, even, depending, you know, what you're passing. But it's important to get tested. But I'm also on and recommend PrEP,
Yep.
you know, for HIV prevention. I'm also on DoxyPrep, so I take a daily regimen of doxycycline, which is exactly what I took when I was in Africa to prevent malaria. And so that prevents, in theory, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis. So I think it's important to take control depending on your level of risk fasteners,
Yeah.
your number of partners, and take what's right for you. But it is important to be tested, and
It is.
and educate people, and we're not educating people. I mean, the current government does not seem to be have that as an interest, but
our current government is backwards. And that's
I mean, how many things have we accomplished that we have not, was not even campaigned on, but look at all these important things. I mean, including renewable energy. This has been one of the biggest things. I read an article today about it, but first of all, there was a moratorium on any new projects that happened. So that was any new wind or solar projects. Alberta just completely put a moratorium on until, in theory, February of this year. Now they've undone that, and they have said that they're moving towards re-regulating the market. So currently, the ISO is sort of they're the regulator in the province that chooses the spot price and makes sure there's enough energy on at any given time. But they're going to be redoing that market, creating uncertainty, and those rules aren't set to be in place until 2027. So we're going into another 3-year process of where, last year 90% of the renewable energy investment in Canada was here in Alberta, and we're moving into a period where the next 3 years there's so much uncertainty that we're probably going to lose that edge. And it's really sad because we have the ability to do that. And that's a transitional thing that can move us off oil and gas and provide long-term stability and power prices for us. And
this is what this is what I've never understood. It's not putting your eggs all in one basket. And we've needed to change and evolve and add for a long time. We're not saying... and I'm not saying stop oil and gas completely. That's it, because it is needed in the world. People are using it. It will always probably be needed, but not if we keep doing it as bad as we are. But it's just all these other things. And you think about the stuff that they're just not putting into where we can make so much and help our economy so much. One example is look how much money The Last of Us filming here did for us. Film and TV can do so much for us, and that's the thing that I always was confused by with oil and gas, because oil and gas would bring people here, these big tycoons or whatever businesses. But The Last of Us, for example, now people are obsessed with that show. They saw how beautiful Alberta is, and they're coming to tour around here. The craft beer scene here in Calgary, people are coming around and doing brewery tours. They're going to the mountains. Oil and gas doesn't bring in tourists.
Yep. But on a grand scale, I mean, it does bring in billions of dollars, which is, in order to get that same amount from tourists, we need millions of tourists. And currently our infrastructure is such, getting out to Banff and Lake Louise and where people want to go, it's already at a tipping point where it's almost too many people and too many cars in the summer. Have you tried to get in Banff on a Saturday? It's just not even worth going most of the time. But I just want to scoot back to one thing you said around this government. I mean, it is the lack of forethought, and it's the lack of investment. I mean, around movies in particular, Netflix just signed a union deal actually with Alberta unions. And so it's likely they're going to be filming a number of shows here in the coming years, hopefully. But there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to diversify. And you're right, the beer scene and the beer tax that they went down. I forgot what I was circling back to, though. So
that's how it goes. Passing time with Craig.
I know, right?
It's just all over the map.
Yeah.
I never have a good train of thought.
I mean, oil and gas does bring in a lot of money, and it brings in a lot of money for the country. And it's sad that, when Peter Lougheed was, the first of really the premiers to deal with oil and gas and set up the Heritage Fund, it's really sad that this province was robbed by multiple conservative premier after conservative premier to spend the money, which people would rather see the money immediately than invest it into the future. I mean, I think we all live a little bit that way, but it's unfortunate because we could be sitting in a very different spot in this province with billions of dollars rolling in interest, that we're generating, as opposed to interest that now we need to pay because we are in debt. But At the same time, we have public transportation. There is a bit of renewable energy. That was the point I was going to circle back to, is the renewable energy. Renewable energy in this province was growing from private investment. It didn't require public funds, and the moratorium and this uncertainty that's been introduced with re-regulating or changing the regulations of ISO are really going to diminish the private investment dollars that were coming in that were sizable.
Yeah.
Like 90% of renewable energy again in Canada was being invested here. And it's very sad that we're not going to take those billions of dollars and create new forms of energy for ourselves and tie into BC and be able to sell our wind and our solar to them when we have excess. And, maybe they pump some water back into their reservoirs and we're able to take that power when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, But instead of thinking that way, which I think is the Liberals are trying to encourage all the provinces to do, we have obstructionist provincial government that just chooses instead to pick fights and divide people. And I think it's the wrong way to view politics, but it's cynical. I followed this woman for a while on Instagram. This is a total aside, but and I recently stopped following her because she posted something political, and not that I'm against political things in any form, but the crux of the video was the things that I trust more than our government. And then it was all these ridiculous things that, people, 5-day-old sushi at a gas station, all of these things. Yeah. It's rather ridiculous. But I really think that if you live in a democracy, if you live in a republic, if you live in a constitutional democracy or constitutional republic, it's important and it's a responsibility to vote and to take part in government. And if you don't trust the government, then the fault is on you because you and the people decide. And so, we can try and persuade each other. We can try and have debatable, debates that provide context to people and are polite, and we can disagree without being disagreeable. But it's your responsibility, and so I think the right, both in Alberta and Canada-wide, and also in the U.S., has really gone through a period of we need to cut the money that's coming into government and give it back to you in the form of tax credits because government can't spend it. And then we're in a period where we're in deficits because we've cut our income. So now we have to cut our services. And so now we can't deliver on the services. We can't provide the doctors. So then the natural argument is, well, government is, incapable of delivering those things, when in reality, we have done it to ourselves in the form of, taxes that are probably too low, to support the services that we want. And that's a shame because it leads us to poor education systems, which then lead to, the cycle of people not being able to critically think and being swayed by cheap arguments and being able to be controlled by fear-based motives. And I just don't think that's what the citizenry should, accept at all. We have a responsibility to have the government that we want. And I think in North America in particular, we rebelled against, well, in the US, we rebelled against monarchy. It's still monarchy here, but, certainly, God save the king. But it's, we have to trust in our institutions, or then why do we live here? Yeah. It's we can change the institutions and they should evolve and they should continue to grow, but we have to be invested in them, and we have to think that, for you, if you were buying 100 of something, it would be cheaper than buying one of it. If you're buying 1,000 of it, of course, it's going to be cheaper than 100. If you're buying 1 million of them for Canada, it's going to be cheaper than if we're all buying it individually. So we should use those opportunities for pharmacare, for dental care, for vision care, for, all of healthcare. We should use those opportunities the way we do for maternal care and EI. Those are things that government can do. But at the same time, I also think it's government's place to invest in the big infrastructure, the trains that are really connecting us by cities. We don't have that. We don't have high-speed rail here in Canada. We don't have that high-speed rail in the U.S. either. It's we're really falling behind because we're not making the investments in infrastructure that we need to, but we're also not investing in the research and development that we once were. We're not doing as many new cutting-edge things. We're leaving that more to the private sector, which I think is the downfall of capitalism, sadly, is like, it becomes too individualized, money becomes too concentrated, and then all of us suffer because we all are trying to share in a smaller and smaller piece of the pie. And it's indentured servitude. It's modern slavery. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I wanted to ask you, you've mentioned growing up Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
So you're American, live in Canada now.
I'm a Canadian too.
And you're Canadian. What do you say to all the Canadians who view the States and think that it's like what's going on in their political system is completely different than ours and we're so lucky?
I would say do not count your chickens. I am astounded frequently by what happens in U.S. politics. I did not expect the outcome in 2016 that it was. I think there's a number of reasons that it happened, which is ironic given today's political context and some of the same things that the 2016 opponent was accused of. Now the Biden's 2024 opponent is accused of, in a worse fashion. But it's interesting how short-memoried people are. In Canada, we are moving towards a populist style of politics. There was a vein that was hit with the truck rallies. There was a vein that was struck around the transgender issue here in Alberta. There's a big divide of people, and it's fear politics. It's least common denominator politics. It's firing people up with a slogan as opposed to really governing. And really, governing should be about love and protecting the most vulnerable. It shouldn't be about attacking and ostracizing anybody, except people that are not following what they should be doing, like the laws that we've agreed upon. But the style of politics in the U.S. has moved here. I mean, the divisional politics of Danielle Smith is not a step away from the divisional politics in Florida with Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
The don't say gay. That's what she's bringing in. If you want to talk about gay or transgender issues in a classroom, you need affirmative, parental consent. Like, we are literally passing those same laws here. Yeah. We are dividing people. What amount of work has gone into healthcare? We are reorganizing healthcare, which just means we're going to spend millions of dollars to break it apart into a bunch of different organizations and then have a lot of confusion about who's doing one. Meanwhile, we have doctors on a daily basis that are leaving this province that are vocalizing at the top of their lungs how hard it is to survive right now because they don't have an agreement.
You have doctors and teachers both going, bye, Alberta.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we are losing the people that provide the service, which is going to impact our quality of life. Already, it's hard to get a primary care doctor in Alberta. I feel lucky to have one. I feel lucky to have one that's also an American. So it's interesting, but excuse me. I think that style of politics is already here. I mean, Danielle Smith is an incarnation of that, and my concern is that at the federal level, Pierre is also is that same incarnation. It's the populist divisional politics. It's the divide, and the unfortunate part is I feel like the Liberals have definitely taken some missteps in some key areas, and the Conservatives are very good at exploiting those missteps. And I don't know what the Liberals do to overcome that, but I was a little Liberal voter back in since I've been able to vote on a federal level. Currently, my riding is NDP provincially. Kathleen Gainley, and so I voted for her for MLA in the last provincial election. She's running for NDP leadership, and Ninchi got into the race. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yes. But, I was going to ask you about that. We'll get into that.
But I guess my concern is on a federal level, one of the key things that Justin Trudeau ran on when he was first elected was proportional representation, and that promise was never delivered upon. And I think now we're going to see the repercussions of that because, it is back to 40% of the population can have an outsized majority in our parliament system. And that's the system that we have. And so we have to be mindful of that and people that are on the more progressive end of the spectrum. We have to be more strategic in how we think about that. But I think that still needs to be the ultimate goal of the left, is to get to proportional representation, because that allows everybody to vote for where you think you are or where you want to be versus strategically voting. And I think it's better to have a government that is made up of minority parties that has to compromise. It's a dirty word in our politics, but it has to compromise, because I think you get to better legislation when you work together to come up with solutions. And while you may not always get everything you want, it's working towards a common good, and everybody's on the same page about what's, the goal is to have a better Canada. The goal is to have a better U.S. I think the U.S. struggles with a two-party system, and my concern, in Alberta, we have a two-party system de facto now, hopefully. It seems to be the two. But, federally, I think we diminish the vote based on, having that. And so it's a little bit of a struggle, especially out here in Alberta. So Nenshi, I want to ask you, how do you feel about Nenshi running?
I don't know why I seemed shocked by it. It made sense.
He telegraphed it pretty well. He had floated the idea of it based on the Alberta NDP rules. There was a period of time he had to be approved, and, that all took some time. So he sort of announced as soon as he could. And he's at a little bit of a disadvantage because I'm pretty sure everybody's required to have a party membership by April 22nd if you want to vote in the thing. So if you're going to vote for Nenshi or anybody else for the NDP, there's a lot of great candidates. Kathleen Gainley is in my riding. She's an excellent candidate as well. But I think Nenshi really has the name recognition.
I think Nenshi has a name recognition. I was talking to a friend the other day about it, and, he's like, well, a lot of Calgarians became very unhappy with Nenshi near the end. But I was like, well, even if you can get a decent amount in Calgary, we know Calgary is not the breadwinner for Alberta if you want to be the leader.
In order to be the premier in Alberta, in order to win, you have to win 2 of 3 areas. So there's the Edmonton area, the Calgary area, and then essentially everything else, rural Alberta. Medicine Hat and Lethbridge and Red Deer, they would argue that they're not all rural, but, smaller town Alberta.
Yeah.
But I think Nenshi could bring along a lot of people in Calgary, and Edmonton is already an NDP stronghold. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think he can do Edmonton, even though he was mayor of Calgary. I think Edmonton's already a win for him.
Yeah, the Edmonton's going to vote for the NDP. So
and I think if it's Nenshi versus Smith, I don't know. I want to say Nenshi. I don't even know anymore.
I definitely think he has the name recognition to win. And I think he's going to bring a lot of people that may not have considered the New Democrats into the New Democrats. I've watched a couple of his videos. It's very inclusive. It's a story of hope. It's a story of, Canada being a place of possibilities. And I think more Albertans want to believe that Alberta is a place of possibility, is a place where you can grow a family, is a place where, you get paid a decent wage and can eke out a living. And ideally more than eke out a living, be successful here. And I think we all, well, speaking for myself, I want to see a level of politics where that's what the focus is. The drive is, around the betterment of what we have versus the constant division and fighting. It's so counterproductive. It's such a waste of energy. If we put that same amount of energy towards coming up with a compromise on whatever the topic is, that's so much better than spending all your time in unhappiness.
And I feel like that's been a big part of the past, I don't know how many years now, but I've really noticed it the past 10 years or so, between when one party gets into place and then the next party gets in, they keep switching back and forth. A lot of people get mad because they feel like nothing's been done. And a part of it is because they're trying to fix what the previous party did, whether it was for good or bad or whatever it may be. But in this party's mind, this needs to be changed. And so I just feel like we're just doing the same things over and over again. It's I thought we covered this. I remember when Donald Trump was asked when he was running the first time, he was asked like about gay marriages, and he's like, I don't know, like he's like, it's already been approved. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna waste my time with that. And I was like, okay, I kind of appreciate you that, like, for that. Did he have some backward ideas about the queer community? Yes, but I was like, it's those little things that, like, why are we trying to repel these rules? You know, Roe versus Wade, like in the States. Why do we just keep going back to these things?
I mean, it's why do we keep going back to these things? It's the tried and true playbook. It's the divisional politics, and there is a subset of Canada and there's a subset of the U.S. that is old and it is white, and it longs for a time from the 30s, 40s, 50s, before civil rights, when they had all the power and everybody looked like them on their street corner, and they never were in a situation where they were uncomfortable or they were never challenged with a different language. I think it's interesting in the U.S. in particular, there's no official language in the U.S. Frequently,
Really?
none.
Oh.
No, there's no official language in the U.S. So English is often spoken, but
Yeah.
things are also in Spanish frequently in the South. Up here, I mean, we have 2 official languages, but I think that's something people don't realize is there's not an official language in the U.S. And so, but there's a lot of white people that are, and I use white people as a white person and really believe that the shrinking majority of white people in the U.S. And part of that here, you know, people live out of fear of the unknown because they just don't know, or they're blissfully ignorant, or they, even worse, they choose to be ignorant. But we go back to these things because it's easy to sway an additional group of people into your area by dividing and conquering, by making people scared, by scaring parents into, you know, oh, just any old nurse can take your child and get them on, you know, suddenly on hormone blocker. Like,
Yeah.
That's not realistic in Alberta. Like, even now, in order to get to that point, like, there's a number of doctors and psychologists and parents that need to be involved. And so there's a lot of fear mongering and misinformation that's out there. And I think misinformation is being contributed by other countries. Not so much on our domestic politics, not so much on our provincial politics, perhaps. But what do I know? You know, what do I know about bots that exist and things? I'm not sure. But, you know, it's definitely been shown that China has influenced Canadian elections.
Yeah.
And Russia is working to influence American elections. I have to imagine that China has also influenced American elections. And based on Canada's position towards Russia, I have to imagine that they're working on it too, and amongst a number of other actors. And so, you know, without more transparency from our federal government around that, without more ability to critically think for ourselves and to have an honest and constructive debate, I mean, I'm really scared in the direction that we go, because we can be divided so much more easily than we can be united. Kentucky is a commonwealth, as a random piece of information, but do you know what the motto of Kentucky is?
No.
It's on our state flag as well. United we stand, divided we fall. And I feel like that's it's true now as ever. And so Kentucky is randomly divided. It has a Democratic governor, and every other state-held seat is a Republican across the board. So, but it's the fastest growing economic state in the U.S. economically. Yeah. So
Go Kentucky.
I know, making some great strides. 2 reasons I would never move back. Are you ready?
Ready.
Free healthcare.
Okay.
Lack of available guns. I don't just want to walk into a supermarket or a concert or something and somebody just starts shooting one day.
Yeah.
Or get in a car, you know, like cut somebody off, not even meaning to, and
It's
suddenly somebody pulls out a gun. It's really quite scary.
It is quite scary, and it still baffles me that it's like that, and they keep, you know, it's the whole thoughts and prayers, let's do something, and then nothing happens, and then it's another, and it's just that vicious cycle.
I mean, it's the Second Amendment in the States, but, you know, for all the textualists and, you know, constitutionalists and originalists out there, like, if you go back and read the wording of the Second Amendment, it's the right to bear arms is part of a well-regulated state militia. And so, you know, well-regulated, number one, and state militia, number two, like, it's an easy thing to solve if everybody's required to have insurance if you have a gun. If, you know, imagine how much insurance would be with 50 guns, 100 guns. Imagine if they're semi-automatics. Like, the market would take care of itself. and well regulated. You shouldn't, you have to have a driver's license to drive. You should have a gun license to own a gun. It should be required things to transport a gun like it is here in Canada. But it's convenient that often the textualists and originalists don't want to go back to the original. They just want to go back to, the version of the original that they want to cite. So.
Right. I mean, that's how it always goes with all these older books and documents. It's like, what works for me?
I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's in a class around Roman history, and he was noting that, frequently if an emperor was popular with the people, but not necessarily popular with the elites, then the elites were responsible for writing history, right? They're the ones that documented what happened. And so, if they weren't popular with the elites, they were frequently framed in other ways as, like party animal and like, not very, I don't know what they were framed as, but I remember that, and it's true because the victors often write history, or the people that are left often write the history. And so, it's interesting to think about what history thinks of Donald Trump right now and quality of prime minister or quality of president in the U.S. I wonder what history is going to think of Justin Trudeau once he's no longer in office.
Yeah.
I mean, Stephen Harper, I don't know that we do. I haven't seen any of that. I'm going to look that up.
I feel like I saw something briefly mentioned the other day about Stephen Harper, but it's just like, oh yeah, that like he's a thing.
He's the thing. I mean, he's still active. He's still
plays in a band.
I think he has a law practice. He still does some international trips and such.
Yeah.
So
well, it's always it's always a very interesting thing I find when time has gone by and when that person may be no longer with us or would they pass away, what's said.
Well, Brian Mulroney died.
Yeah.
In the last couple of weeks. I didn't live in Canada during Brian Mulroney, so I don't know that I have that much of an opinion. But like, what do you remember of the Mulroney days? Or
I don't really remember much, because by the time I really. I knew Ben Mulroney, his son,
okay,
from Canadian Idol before.
Okay,
I knew who Brian Mulroney was.
Okay,
I feel like Canadians are. I mean, I think it's pretty well documented that we learn more about American history than we do Canadian history, and we do talk about the prime ministers. We learn about them all, but it's very quick and easy, and I think it's like, I bet you there was like fill in the blanks of this prime minister did this. This prime minister was the only female prime minister. Like, they just a note for each of them. There were a few that lasted a little bit longer than others, came back into power, but yeah, it just, we don't dive deep into learning about the prime ministers.
Okay. I feel like for the citizenship test, I had to learn a lot about the prime ministers, and I did learn a lot about the prime ministers. But yeah, the different provinces.
We keep talking about it because Nicole and Simon have filed for theirs to become citizens.
I'm so excited for them.
And so we have been chatting as a group of all of us taking a citizenship test together. Mm-hmm. And we bet you Nicole and Simon, Simon and I have chatted about stuff, and it's like, oh, I know you guys have to learn a lot more than we do.
I mean, it's a 67 page. It was 67 pages when I learned it. Book. It's kind of like a textbook.
Yeah.
And they say that they can quiz you on anything on any page. So you read it a few times for sure to make sure you remember, but I definitely recommend there's a lot of practice questions online to help prepare people. If you do those, the format is very much the same. I mean, they're all multiple choice. I think I had 20 of them maybe. Yeah. I went through and I completed it and I was the first one done. And I was like, oh, maybe I should go back and just double check them. So I reread everyone and checked it. I was still the first one done, and I got them all right. So it's, I wouldn't say it's a hard test to pass, but it's definitely daunting initially with what you need to learn.
Yeah.
Not necessarily daunting, but 67 pages. I'm a relatively avid reader and,
Yeah.
and good at remembering things. And, I'm glad I'm not 70 or 80 doing that test. It would be harder, but it's, if you do the practice tests, it's relatively straightforward.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's kind of like getting your learners. Like,
I mean,
probably a little bit more harder.
what was it like getting your
but
learners here?
It was like, what is it, 20, 30 questions?
Okay.
And you have to get 75% or something
Okay.
like that. But
That's similar to Kentucky. I failed my first learner's test, actually.
really?
Yeah, it was terrible. So I had not studied clearly enough, and I came back and I did not fail the second time. But then on my actual driving test, I'll have you know, I got 100. So
wow,
I know.
well done.
I know.
Well done.
I can parallel park.
Well done. Oh, parallel parking. Okay, so as we start to wrap up here, we chatted a bit at the beginning about being gay in Calgary.
okay.
So I feel like it's good to like bring it full circle. So first of all, the dating scene in Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like for you?
What's that like for me? The dating scene. I have not dated that much recently. I am on my own journey of finding value and what I want and worth, and I think I'm close. I'm hopeful to like start meeting people. I mean, I've met people. It's not that. It's just I haven't been open to dating,
Yeah.
I guess is what I would say. I find it hard to meet people here who know what they want.
Right.
I think that's again, circling back to, and not just arousal constellation, but, know what they need out of a partner, who have done the work on themselves to know, like what their strengths are and, where they have opportunities, and know what their default reactions are, and, can adjust that and respond differently when given the choice, who can have honest and open conversations, who, have a similar language to what I have as far as, desire out of relationship, as far as arousal, as far as like relational type. I feel like on the apps, there's a lot of, I've only had a face picture on one app, and it was accompanied by like an essay of 10,000 words about, what I was looking for.
Yeah.
This is like a year ago. And, it's just like way too much information, but it was where I was at the time. It was a
Yeah.
good snapshot. But one of the things I don't like, and one of the things I found is with that, I feel like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, you're hot, we should hang out. Or, like, and I find it hard to want to invest time in coffee, in a walk, and getting to know somebody, and to, giving a lot of energy to people if they're not compatible.
Yeah.
And, navigating what compatibility looks like through, I was on Hinge, I think, for a while, which limits you to like 3 or 4 prompts of like 140. It's just,
Yeah.
can't know anybody that way. That doesn't work for me. I was on Scruff with a face picture. That's the, long essay. And people still didn't take the time to read it, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's aggressive, 10,000 words, but, I kind of need a handbook for if somebody's going to come at me, what that looks like.
The apps are just, I get them and then I delete them because they're just so, it's the same people mostly. And it's ridiculous because you have these people who are like, they will say in their profile, like, I don't do hookups. Like, I just want relationship. I'm like, cool, nothing wrong with that. I'm happy with that. And they'll message me and I'll be like, hey, good. Like, how you doing? And they'll go, kind of horny, to be honest. Like, you want to come over? I was like, you just don't. And
The mixed messaging.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong if you just want to hook up. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't almost like shame people by saying like, I don't do that, but then immediately be like, no, I want to. Yeah, it's just. But I'm the same as you. I'm so busy, and most of my job is in the evening time, so I don't really have a lot of free evenings. I have a lot of free daytime. Not all the time. I've got event stuff to plan for.
Yeah.
I'm recording the podcast, and I'm like you, where I don't know if I want to waste my time on a coffee date where it could lead to absolutely nothing, and they're really boring, and because they can hold a conversation through text message but they can't do it in person, when I could have used that free time to spend it with a friend who I haven't seen in forever, or take my nieces and nephews to the zoo, like something like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's a challenge. How do you overcome that? Because if you're not meeting people, then how do you know when there is a connection? But at the same time, I want there to be the connection before I'm willing to do it. It's harder to meet people in person these days than it used to be. It's a challenge that I don't have the answer for, to be honest. If you have any advice, I'm certainly open to what that looks like.
I want to do more. I hosted a singles trivia night, and that was super fun. And I want to do more events with single people, for single people, just because I think it's always going to be needed.
It's always going to be needed, absolutely. I don't know. I don't know. Right now in my life, I'm at a point where, there's a lot of open relationships. I think we, again, once we get past that shame of like, what's your sexual orientation?
Yeah.
I think people are open to a lot of different relational types these days. There's a lot more open relationships. There's a lot more of those type of things. I don't know. I want somebody who's on the same page that I'm looking for a primary partner, a primary sexual partner. Does that mean that I think you can always meet my sexual needs? No. Am I likely to get those needs met elsewhere if you have shit going on in your work life or your personal life or other shit that, just doesn't give you the capacity, then that's definitely a possibility. But I want somebody who I practice my art with on a daily basis. That is really what I enjoy doing, and it releases so much creativity and so much positivity, and it's the intimacy is so nice, and I want somebody I can do that with. But equally, I feel like that's my gateway right now. I feel like if we don't have that connection, then I don't want to spend any time over coffee chit chatting, just because I have a lot of people in my life and a lot of expectations already, and I want to give my energy where it's loved and desired and returned. And I feel like it's a needle in a haystack, and for all of us, that are single, are trying to figure out what that needle is, where that thread goes, and find it, for each of us. And I feel challenged by that at the moment, certainly, and it feels daunting looking ahead towards that. But I feel like the journey I'm on is good, and the pathway has been healing and full of growth, and I like that, and I think I will find, whatever the next step is.
And again, that's so important to just know when you're ready, and so many relationships crash and burn because one or two of the people in the relationship is not there yet. And, I've been really focusing on myself and figuring out who I am and growing, passing time with Craig. And so now I'm more like, okay, I think I could be open to a relationship now. But I know a couple years ago I was not ready, and there's receipts to prove that.
The style of relationship, some people want monogamy, some people don't. It's so important to have those conversations. I think I don't know, for me, I find people who are in open relationships a turnoff at present. And it's not that I'm opposed to open relationships. I just, if I can't be a priority in your time, then I don't know that I want to invest that much time into it, because I want more for myself than that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm worth more than that. And so, I struggle with that, because there's a lot of that on the apps. There's a lot of, people still in the closet, or, who aren't straightforward and honest about what they want and where their consent lines are, and, what they want out of life, or what they do, or the drugs they take, or, there's all sorts of things, and to each their own in making that decision. I just wish there was a easier way to find people that are transparent and open and interested in growing a connection with somebody, and then of that subset of people, now I need to find the ones that are compatible. And then with that subset, the ones that can handle my energy on a regular basis. It's it's very much a needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
But,
I know. I don't know if anyone can handle my energy.
That's an open question. I'm sure the right person.
Yeah.
I'm too much for most people, but my new saying is, if I'm too much, you should go find less.
Oh.
Yeah, because you're not too much. You're perfectly exactly how you should be, and you should let all of your light out, and you should celebrate that, and you should be the smiley, bubbly person that you are all the time. And the right person, doesn't want to hold that back. And you don't need someone, but, wouldn't it be great to find someone that wants to build that up even more, that wants to, champion the space that makes you perform the best, and wants to be your cheerleader. I just, that person is out there. So at least I have to hope that person's out there.
They're out there. They are out there. Okay. I always like to ask this as we wind up here. What is awesome? Tell me something awesome.
Awesome fun things that are happening in Calgary. So for the gay community, there's an event on March 29th that is put on by Hot Sausage. It is the official after party on Friday for Western Cup,
yes,
which is in town. It'll be hosted at Twisted. And so it will be an amazing, awesome event. I highly recommend it. So that'll be awesome for the gay community. On a side note there, Calgary's an interesting place. We only have a couple of, bars that identify as queer spaces. Really the Backlot and Twisted.
Yeah.
And the Backlot is potentially closing to build a condo, and Twisted is struggling right now because the community doesn't come out and support it. And if we don't support these places, we're going to lose them. And so when there's big fun events, I highly recommend coming out to it. So March 29th, Hot Sausage, highly recommend. What else is awesome? This conversation. I am so excited to be part of your podcast and to be invited onto the show and to just chat about the most random topics with you. And this has been awesome.
This has been awesome. This is super fun. I'm so glad you came on. I feel like I'm going to need you. It's months away, but it's also going to come out real fast. I'm going to need you in November as we're leading up to the U.S. election. I think we're going to have to.
I would be delighted to do a couple political shows.
Yeah, we'll have to do a couple, I think. I think we'll do one kind of leading up and then afterwards and what's going to happen.
I don't know. I mean, I heard last time from a bunch of my friends, if Trump wins, I'm moving to Canada. Nobody moved.
Yeah.
This time around, I've already heard it from my mom, who's like, if he wins again, your sister and I are moving out there. I'm like, okay, Mom.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a scary time.
It's scary. It's weird.
He wants to be a dictator just for a day, but what does that even look like?
Yeah.
We don't have kings here.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know. It's anyways, we're wrapping up with awesome things. Awesome things.
Awesome things.
And you were awesome, Jeff. I really appreciate you being here today and chatting with me, passing time with me, as always.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have you back because we can talk for hours.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you all for passing time with me. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Craig.
And we'll chat soon. Bye, everybody.